I'm live. So I'm going to be telling you about this book I just finished, and I went through a barrage of about 90 pages today, getting to the end of this, and it's only 187 pages, I think, something like that. 100, I think it's 187. Yeah, 187 pages. So I read half of it today. A little bit blurry-eyed, but I wanted to give you some background on what everybody knows as a famous Christmas ballet. Everybody's heard of the Nutcracker, and I don't know if you're like me, but most of the time, if you've gone to that show, you just kind of watch and you look at the pretty colors and the weirdness. It's tin soldiers standing on stage doing their thing and whatever. And you don't really know what it's about. So I found this very pretty decorated book on Amazon, and I thought, well, I want to know what it's about since Christmas is coming. And wow, it's a lot different than I thought it would be. So originally, there was a guy named Hoffman that wrote The Nutcracker and the Mouse King. And Dumas, who I've also just recently read two books of his. I read the Three Musketeers, and what was the other famous one? Anyway, I've got a book review of the other Dumas book a couple of weeks ago. Famous guy. He kind of did the Hoffman story and supposedly made it less scary. And I thought, wow, it must have been really bad. If you wanted to see a really scary version, you might want to go back to the Hoffman version of Nutcracker and the Mouse King, because the Story of a Nutcracker by Alexander Dumas is pretty scary and weird. It begins with a line that's equivalent to how the doctors of that time, I guess in Germany, knew how to get away with killing people, and that was their trade, that they did it for some kind of entertainment or something. That was immediately shocking me and going, okay, I guess I'm in for something weird. And the other part of this is it was supposed to scare a bunch of pretty much rotten kids at the beginning who'd been into some mischief. And I think the idea was this book was going to whip them into shape somehow. I'm not quite sure how, because it does have a happy ending, but it seems like all the characters go through pretty much really bad stuff to end up where they end up. And honestly, it kind of seemed a little bit like it was an allegory for heaven after going through a bad experience of life on earth. And I'm not sure if that's right or not. I tried to look up themes and things like that, but I have not found that yet. So you might want to look up the themes of this book and see what is the point. It's kind of meandering. Our modern stories we see on the movies and TV, they pretty much are very simple. I mentioned this to my group here, that stories of the old days were very complicated and they meander all over the place. And that was how Three Musketeers was. It was all over the place. It was not these three guys went off doing these fun adventures and it's this great adventure story. It was more about political infighting and somebody trying to ambush another person and have a war with this guy, and these guys are involved and all this bad stuff happens. Human history is a lot more violent and complicated than we think of it nowadays. People can't grasp how much turmoil was going on, and the same thing in this book. So I don't want to give you too many details about how it goes through, like a summary, but basically this king wants this nut cracked, and it's a very hard nut, and he's told these two guys to go off to find it, and if they can't find it, the one's going to get his head cut off and maybe the other one too. So that gives you a little idea of how dark it is. They eventually find a nut, and then it's like the sword and the stone, where they're having a whole bunch of people attempt to crack the nut, and they're all going to break their teeth out trying to chew this nut, and break their jaws and dislocate their jaws. And so there's a lot of really violent imagery in this. And so then you have to ask yourself the question at the end of the day is it actually a worthy Christmas story? And I don't know what to say about that. It's kind of confusing. I mean, you wouldn't read it to a little kid, I don't think. It is very bizarre and it's very visual, so kids would appreciate perhaps the creativity in it. But it's so weird and borderline threatening and making you feel uncomfortable. And the way that it summarizes at the end, or finishes at the end of it, where the person goes off with the other person, I wouldn't call it a, I guess it's a lives happily ever after kind of ending, but I don't know. It's almost as if they went off to this alternate dimension like heaven or something. Maybe they, I don't know. It's a really weird book. So anyway, I just wanted to give you my feelings about this more than the book review. So is it worthy to have on your bookshelf because it looks pretty and it's got a lot of history to it? Yes. If you want to keep, important literature around and stuff that's interesting to talk about with your friends when they come over, this is definitely a worthy book. And it is an eye-opening experience into the background of the musical, and so that people might have a deeper understanding of what they're watching when they go to these things at Christmas. But as far as a children's book or gifting it to a younger person, I don't know. Maybe like a teenager would be more appropriate, or an adult to read it just for the historical perspective. But it is definitely a weird book, and that's my feeling on that. I didn't come across. I mean, the last 15 pages, maybe you can get this really nice feeling of Christmas and stuff, and it's almost like the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory kind of feeling at the end, where they've got like these rivers and streams with lemonade and orange juice and maple syrup and stuff like that. So if that's your idea of Christmas, then perhaps they're walking on like underneath the Christmas tree, and it's like the Christmas forest. It's all decorated. That imagery is pretty cool, but the getting to that part, which is the majority of the book, isn't that. So if you're looking for that kind of feeling, I don't know if this is the book for you. But if you want a historical document that kind of connects the dots to the play, then maybe. All right. Have a good one. Bye.